Welcome to the STEM Pathways with Rohan Sharma podcast, where we dive into the exciting world of science, technology, engineering, and math. In each episode, we share exciting stories, groundbreaking research, and inspiring interviews with experts and enthusiasts who are pushing the boundaries of innovation. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just curious about how the world works, join us as we explore the endless possibilities of STEM. Let's get started. Today I'll be interviewing Raul Flamenco, who holds a bachelor's from the University of Southern California in electrical engineering. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity, Rohan.
And thanks for speaking with me. So to get started, I kind of want to ask what your experience was like while you're still in high school and in El Salvador.
Thank you for the question. My dream was to go to college. My mother completed only first grade of education in El Salvador, and she completed her first grade in the evenings. So I was completely, focused into going to school at night, Instituto Nacional Francisco Menendez, and then working during the day. However, in 78, my mother said, well, we're going to the United States. So when I got here to the United States, I thought my dream was gone, right? Because I couldn't even figure out where to start. So the first decision that I made was to adopt English as my new language and then continue going to Hollywood Community Adult School and ultimately graduated with a high school diploma there. Now, during the school time at Hollywood High, one professor mentioned that I could, if I completed the high school, I could go to college. And so that kind of helped me to figure out that the next step was going to be City College, Los Angeles City College, and ultimately USC. With luck, I graduated from USC. Now, the one thing probably that when I look back, getting to USC and especially electrical engineering, the key thing probably was math. I always liked math. And so when I spent time at LACC, I used to go and talk to the counselor all the time and ask, what can I do with math? And so the answers that I received were either you can be an engineer or you can be a mathematician, right? And so I decided to go for engineering because I want to apply what I learned to do something with it. But at that point, at LACC, I didn't know what kind of engineer, right? Because there are so many. But during my time at USC and also at LACC, came in contact with electromagnetism. And so I failed the class in LACC and I got to repeat the class at USC. And so that concept of the combination of electricity and magnetism pointed me in the direction of electrical engineering.
Yeah. So, what year did you finish your bachelor's degree then?
What year?
Yeah.
1992.
And what was the first thing you did after completing it?
So at the time when I was doing when starting at USC, I had come in contact with great opportunities of internships. So I completed an internship with PepsiCo that took me from LA all the way to Purchase, New York. And I had a chance to meet the then CEO of PepsiCo, which is Roger Enrico. It was an incredible ride. But I was trying to figure out what I really, really wanted to do, right? So I also managed to secure a job, but I had a hard time finishing at the end, right? Because I failed a class in microprocessors. So that forced me to take another class in a space that I was not familiar with, which is computer networking. And so I liked computer networking so much that I asked the professor, what can I do to create a career in this space? And he said, you're going to have to program because networks will become software. So my last class at USC was a C program. Now, when I finished, I decided to leave my job at this large company in order to finish my degree, right? Some programming that I needed to do. And I realized that I had selected probably one of the worst scenarios for jobs in 1992. So I decided to start a small business. So I became a small business owner, something that I did for at least 6 years. I help physicians, primarily neurosurgeons and neurologists with software and networks.
And can you talk a little more about what that entailed and how that kind of taught you about running a business?
Yeah, so you know, although I have a very large family in El Salvador currently, right, that I can say it is probably as big as 250 members. Back then, I felt that my family was very small, only my mother and I, because I grew up. She is the one who looked after me from the very beginning. My father died when I was 11 months old, and so I was very close to my mother. But at the very end, exactly at the same year when I entered USC in 87, she was diagnosed with cancer. But I think it's part of the culture that she kept that information from me, right? And so I got to learn about the condition after it was pretty advanced. So at that point, we had to visit a lot of doctors, right, in order to find the best care for her. And so that kind of put me in front of the doctors, and I came to the conclusion there was an opportunity to help them in how to manage doctors, the medical practices.
And so how many years were you running that for again?
I did that, I think, for 6 years.
Hmm. And were
Yeah.
you creating kind of software for them to work off of?
No, so that was the other thing, right? As a founder, right, you don't have any money. At that point, all I had were student loans, right? So I went to the public library, to Pasadena Public Library, and I looked at a bunch of encyclopedias in terms of all this software publishing. And I selected one that I thought could help practices, but at the same time, I could afford it. So I became a representative. So I was reselling the software, for these publishers.
Hmm. And what'd you do after that then?
After that, after that time, I came to learn the following, right? The first concept in business for me was you either work in the business or you work on the business. So far, I had been only working in the business. I had to learn how to sell because that was not something that I was trained at USC, but it was a personal interest that I have learned by working while going to school. But I had to learn more, even more, right, in order to sell the products. So I did everything. I mean, I sold, for example, the product to the doctor. I turn around and then I prepared the training to train the people on how to use the software. And then I install the software and then I support it. So gradually, right, it's small business, you grow that over time. But it came to a point where I had to decide either I'm going to grow this business or I'm going to go and work for somebody else, right? And so I decided that because I had a family, I had young kids at the time, I decided to go and work for a large company. And it was a perfect match, right? Because that combined my sales and business experience with my interest in networking. So I help enterprises with computer networks by working with Sprint. Now, Sprint at the time had a project, right? They had invested $5 billion in 5 years creating the product, and I sold the product, but we couldn't deliver it because the market took a different direction. So back then, at the time, I couldn't understand this, right? But many years later, when I went to business school, I got to learn that the important thing for a business that can scale, startup, you need three things, right? You need a market, you need a product, and you need a team. Clearly, Spring had the team and it had the product, right? But the market took a different direction.
Yeah. So a little bit more about your business school. Where'd you go and when do you do that?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2007. So it took a while, from USC to then business school. It was something that I always thought that I wanted to do. When I remember exactly the place where I was crossing the street in front of LACC, Los Angeles City College, when I thought I want to go to business school, right? And I couldn't go to Harvard Business School. So I made a couple of attempts, to go there, but it just didn't work. Later, because of family and work and so on, I came in front of the opportunity to do a global executive MBA. So that's how I completed my MBA degree. Now, the other interest of mine, in addition to entrepreneurship and technology networks, is global, right? And so ISS emphasis is in global. So it gave me the opportunity not only to go to Barcelona, but also to China. So I had a chance to study the Chinese culture while going through the MBA as well.
And how different is a global executive MBA just from a regular one most people would get?
Yeah, so the content is exactly the same, except that it's accelerated, right? Because, for example, the executive MBA would be one where you study prior to a module. It's broken down into different modules, right? Instead of like months. And so you prepare for those modules, you do a lot of preparation, a lot of homework, and then you get together with your team from all over the world, right? We have people from all over the world coming together, to study in Barcelona, and then we work for a couple of weeks, and then we go back to our country to continue collaborating and doing the homework together.
Yeah. So what'd you do once you received your MBA?
Again, as soon as I received an MBA, I did another startup.
And what's like a brief description of it, and then how different was it doing it for the second time?
The second time, the object of the second time was to do a startup. The first time was a business owner. There's a difference between a small business and a startup. Startup has to scale, right? So a startup is a temporary organization searching for what we call a scalable and repeatable business model. And so I made another mistake. I recruited a very good friend to join me, the team, right? Without giving it too much thought as to the good fit for the project. So ultimately, um, it didn't work out because my friend has a lot of good skills and experience, but in a completely different industry and completely different model. So the next thing that I learned is that I really needed to concentrate on finding, people on the team that really want to do the same thing with me.
Yeah, and what was the whole basis behind this startup, and what were you guys trying to do?
The problem that we're trying to solve is where carriers, networks, what I mean by that, let's say Sprint, AT&T, or T-Mobile, they exchange traffic, right? Information. And so that process, it is quite a challenge for businesses. But there is a way to kind of like simplify that for businesses. So there were a couple other companies that were already in the space doing that. And so I just couldn't scale it, and fast enough, and ultimately decided to shelve the project.
So what were your next steps after shelling this?
After shelving this project, right, I had taken my family to the Midwest, right, to Indiana. And so we lived there for 14 years. And so at the same time, not only I'm thinking about business, but I'm thinking about my family, my kids graduating from high school and then come back to California. But things typically don't work exactly the same way that we planned. So I came to the conclusion that the next best thing was to make it back to California. And so that's how I came back to Northern California to continue working for companies in telecommunications, but ultimately starting another business, which is the one that I'm working on today.
And yeah, so I guess we kind of like quickly go over those companies you did work at. Where in California were you, by the way?
I'm in Northern California, very close to Sacramento. Sacramento is the capital of California.
And were those was starting your business that you're working on right now very hard to do while also balancing those jobs?
It is, but after you've done it a couple of times, right, you kind of know what you're getting into, right? Because you know that the first thing that you have to do is find a problem that you can really identify with, and then you feel that you can work to be part of the solution as well.
So yeah, I guess what problem were you trying to solve?
The problem that I'm trying to solve right now is the one where what we call small and medium businesses. I mean, for example, a bank, right? Not a bank as big as JP Morgan, but a community bank, for example, need to probably adopt anywhere from 35 to 70 different products in order to be safe, right? But they need to do that. They need to select those solutions among 10,000 products. So it's very complex. So my interest is in simplifying that process. And the best way that I can think about that is to create what I call a business to business marketplace for cybersecurity.
And yeah, can you actually give us let's dive a bit deeper into that. So Wait, first of all, you started working on this when?
So the company was incorporated in 2018. However, I've been working part-time on that until very recently. I started to put in more time, full-time, to work on it.
Hmm. So right now you're not working any other jobs, you're solely focusing on this?
Focus on this, preparing for. So remember that back my last class at USC was C, right? However, somehow I have told myself that programming wasn't for me, right? Because I've been working in business, most of my career. However, in 2022, I decided to start programming. So I adapted the modern tech stack, primarily JavaScript, Node.js, and then built a prototype. So now part of my focus is in improving that prototype into what we call a minimum sellable product.
And are you working on this just by yourself or do you have a team?
Right now, working by myself, yeah. And I have the other thing that I have done as well, remember, because the second lesson that I learned by doing the previous business was to find the right team. I have now interviewed over 250 potential team members.
And what kind of things are you looking for in these people?
I'm looking for a technical product leader. Technical means I feel very comfortable with, the tech stack that we're using, which is the modern tech stack, Python, right?
And what are the next steps you think with this company and where do you see it going?
The next step, we're working on closing funding, right? Building a team and then scaling the company.
And are you already kind of in business with some people or are you not there just yet?
Yeah. So the way that startups, unlike, small business, you get a product and you sell it, right? Because it's already established. Startup, we work with customers, but we work with customers in terms of discovering, what are the things that they actually need, so we can build something that they're actually going to use. So I'm
Mhm.
at the process of what we call customer discovery. We're talking to customers, enterprises, like for example, businesses that can benefit from this solution.
So, to end off, I usually ask by asking guests if they have one piece of advice for someone who's still in high school or college wanting to follow a similar career path as them. But for you, I wanted to specifically ask if you have advice for someone who's coming to the US as an immigrant, especially from South America.
Yeah, in the past, if people, thank you for the question because this is something that is very, close to my heart. For the people in El Salvador, for example, in Central America, in Latin America, things have changed so much, right? Like, for example, 5 years ago, if we were going to look for what we call unicorns, companies that are worth $1 billion, we can find two, one in Colombia and one down south, right? Mercado Libre. But now, probably you can find at least maybe 200. So that's the level of growth that is happening in Latin America. So the other thing that I want you to know is that perhaps you don't need to come to the United States, right? Because you can do all of this from where you are right now. Not only that, but you can also be close to your family.
Yeah. All right then. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you the best. And remember, USC is the best school for electrical engineers, so you got to come there.